Hello. This is Adelai Brown, your heart coach, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the HeartLine with Adelai Brown. I am so excited to have you here in our heart tribe. I'm so thankful for this space that we have created together. The HeartLine is where we grow and cultivate heart equity. You may ask, what is heart equity? Heart equity is where we grow personal, relational, and financial wealth through authentic living. I'm your host, and I want to thank you for joining me on this powerful May 2025 series that we're doing to honor our mothers for Mother's Day. We're raising awareness about mental health and lupus awareness, and also I'm sharing a little bit about my relationship with my mom because I want to honor her this month for Mother's Day as well as her birthday, and the complicated truth about our relationships with our mothers, right? This episode is about awareness and releasing bondage, baggage and pain through love and truth. And let me be clear, we are not shaming our mothers. We're not shaming our past. We are reclaiming it and reframing it in a way that works for us in this season of our lives. So, whether your relationship with your mother is a beautiful one, a broken one, both, or none of the above, this space is still for you. Because if you're here, you came here by way of a mother, and we all have work to do around our relationships with our mothers. Remember, you can connect with me on social media, Instagram, and YouTube at Heart Coach Talk, TikTok at Heart Coach Talk 1. And if you want to find out more about coaching, the healing spaces that I facilitate, or want me to speak to your group or organization, send an email to info@addiebb.com, or you can just check out my link tree and get all of this information. Linktree / the heart connections. I would love to connect with you. My team and I are ready to see you, hear you, and grow with you. Because remember, when you heal your heart, you transform your life. So today I'm really excited about our show because I really believe that God is doing a serious work in our lives. One of the things that I realize that many of us deal with and we suffer in silence is that many children wrestle and struggle with their relationships with their mothers. And one statistic shows that children of mothers with untreated mental health issues are at significantly higher risk of developing depression, anxiety, or emotional dysregulation. And I can tell you this from my own personal experience that I went through a lot of that with my mother because she was a young mother. She was also dealing with sickness. And because of that, many times she was dealing with depression. She was dealing with PTSD. She was dealing with anxiety and different traumas in her lives that were not being dealt with. And so when we see mothers that go through that many times for the children, this can lead to emotional invalidation, chronic stress in children, and generational patterns of emotional avoidance or overdependence, right? So, conversely, mothers who model emotional intelligence foster emotional resilience in their children. So, when we talk about generational patterns of emotional avoidance or overdependence, this is when you have a culture or a way that you go about doing things in your family. And you do that because that's what your mother did. That's what your grandmother did. That's what your auntie did. That this is how the people in your family do things. And so when we talk about mothers and their children and having this pattern, this cycle of emotional detachment and emotional invalidation, what ends up happening to us as children, we start to think that something is wrong with us. When you are dealing with a little child that has a mother that is not well, my mother wasn't well when I shared with you guys a couple weeks back, and I'll talk about this as we go throughout this series. But when I was younger, um, I realized that my mother dealt with inheriting things. Not just, she didn't just look like her mom and dad. She didn't have features and ways about them. She also emotionally inherited the the culture, the theme of the family at that time. And I want us to think about this as you go through your life, because right now we're talking about our relationships with our mothers. And the actual title of this show is Inherited Pain: How Our Mother's Mental Health Can Become Ours. And what do you do with pain that's inherited? And a lot of us are living through this because we have dealt with generations of people not knowing how, not being able to, not being in a safe space where they felt like they could really express their emotions. Usually, when you're dealing with survival, you're dealing with lack, you're dealing with struggle, you're dealing with opposition, you don't have a lot of time to sit down and talk about how you feel because you're too busy trying to survive. And for me personally, when I started doing hard work, and my mother was like the center of the work that I was doing, because when I started doing hard work, it came as a direct representation of, I knew that I could no longer feel the way I felt about my mother and my father. But because we're talking about mothers, I'm gonna just focusing on mothers. I'll talk about daddies next month, because next month is Father's Day month, right? So I'll get to daddy next month. But I had children, and at the time, my oldest was like, let's say 10 or 11, and my mother and I were at like a stalemate in our relationship. We were coexisting together, we were surviving together, but we were not thriving. We were not healthy. Our relationship was very um routine. It was very cyclical. It was, I just got to deal with you because you my mama, you got to deal with me because I'm your daughter. But it wasn't the nurturing, it wasn't the caring, it wasn't the friendship that we had when she transitioned. And a big part of that, I don't even know if y'all could hear me just now. A big part of that, um, a big part of that particular situation, when we talk about dealing with my mom, I had to make a change because I saw the patterns starting to play out in my relationship with my children, but more specifically, my relationship with my oldest child, which is my oldest daughter. I am my mother's oldest daughter. I'm her only daughter, but I'm her oldest daughter. And what I started to realize was there was a pattern with mothers and daughters having challenging relationships in the family. And I knew that if I was going to have a better relationship with my daughter, I needed to absolutely pay attention to the quality of the relationship that I currently have with my mother. And I just want to stop right here and say this, because what your mother didn't say, a lot of times you still absorbed it from her anyway. And see, a lot of you are going through life right now, and you might be having a challenging romantic relationship. You might be having a challenging relationship experience with some of your friends. You might have a child or children, or someone that you're caring for, and you're having a challenging relationship with them. But I challenge you to take a step back and see if there are any challenges in these relationships that you can tie back, or that might be similar to challenges that you've had in your relationships with your mother. Because how we view the world is a lot of times tied to our relationship with our mother. So I grew up with a mother that had a chronic illness, lupus. And with this being lupus awareness, my lupus is an autoimmune disease. It's a very nasty, evil, wicked disease, as all of them are. And lupus can affect any of your body at any given time. They don't have an exact um they don't have a specific cause for lupus, but they know that stress and trauma that has not been dealt with can absolutely contribute to heightening lupus flare ups.
and causing the symptoms to be exaggerated, right? And as a child, I came into the world with the understanding and the knowledge that my mother had lupus and my mother needed my help. My mother needed my support. When my mother got diagnosed with lupus, they told her she shared the story, and I'm going to tag that in this video, and I'll try to see if I can share my screen and share a little bit of her testimony in this podcast. But my mother got diagnosed with lupus around 18 or 19 years old, and this was back in 1978, 1979. And when people got diagnosed with lupus, many times they didn't live past 30 years old. So when she got diagnosed at 18, 19, they pretty much gave her a 10-year life sentence, death sentence, saying, in other words, we don't expect you to make it for but this long. You won't have any kids. You probably won't have any kids because having kids could cause problems with your lupus. Because lupus is a autoimmune disease, carrying a baby could present a lot of problems for you and for the baby. And so she had a lot that she was up against. So when she got pregnant a few years after getting this information, she was still dealing with the trauma, the emotional trauma, the mental health um issue of, how do I deal with this disease? How do I deal with this disease that nobody really knows about? Nobody um really knows how to deal with. Nobody really knows how to navigate. And now she's this young college student, and now she finds herself pregnant. And she's pregnant for a man that's married. She's pregnant for a man that's much older than her. And so I'm thinking about, as a heart coach, and I know she talked about the challenges that she had, because when she got pregnant, there were many people that she loved that were encouraging her, just as many people that were happy and supportive because she had that. She also had people that were encouraging her not to have the baby, to not go forward with the pregnancy. But she said it was something that she knew about, she needed to keep this baby. And up until her getting pregnant, she was having complications and challenges with lupus. And then my aunt was just recently telling me about how when she got pregnant, she went into remission and didn't have any flare ups until after she had me. And when she did an event in 2023 with us, we did a Village Wealth Week, which was a celebration of mothers and my mother, and raising awareness about mental health as well as lupus awareness. She talked about how after having me, she had a bad flare up, and it was so bad that it was to the point that she couldn't care for me. And so family members had to step in and help her care for me. Why do I share this? Because even though I was a baby and I was going through this with my mother, your body never forgets. Your body keeps the score. And as far back as I can remember, I always remember feeling like I was responsible for my mother. I always felt like I had to take care of her. I had to be there for her. And I couldn't quite understand why. But when I started doing heart work, and when I describe heart work is the type of work that we do, I have a divine heart transplant process that I work through with my clients. But I simply put, heart work is healing, enlightenment, authenticity, and revitalization that we work on, that we make connections with, and that's how we grow heart equity. So when I started doing heart work and really being honest, that's another H that we use when we talk about heart. Honest healing, and being enlightened to my own circumstances. I realized that this people pleasing tendency that I have started a long time ago, because I knew as a little child my mommy was sick and she needed my help. I remember being little and days my mom couldn't get out the bed. I remember having to go get her something to drink out of the, kitchen, or help her do things. And I mean, some of my core memories are memories of having to be there for mommy. And what people don't understand is that when you're a child, you process life differently than you do as an adult. When you are a child, you process life differently. So as a kid, I didn't know um that my mother was, I couldn't process that, your mother is, not well, and this is not your responsibility, but this is just the life that y'all are in. I thought it was my responsibility. I thought I was obligated to do it, and I was, because that's how we survived together. But when I got to be an adult, I realized that I still had resentment, I still had anger, I still had frustration towards my mother because of the things that we went through with lupus and the other sickness that she dealt with in dealing with addiction to drugs and alcohol. That was a disease as well. And that was a disease that she dealt with along with lupus as a result of the traumas and the experiences that she had as a child, where her mother wasn't always emotionally available for her because of her life experiences. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about generational coping, generational trauma, right? We have to understand that there are cycles that we are going through in our families that we got to break. But we can't break the cycle for everybody else. We break the cycle by us as individuals looking at ourselves and decision by decision, moment by moment, saying, like, Mommy, I love you, but I can no longer continue to be in this behavior with you. And like in my relationship, I'm doing a lot of reflecting now. And I remember one day, I will never forget this. Talking about inherited pain. I remember one day I was talking to a nurse about what prednisone does to someone and the side effects of prednisone. And I want to preface this by saying this information is for educational purposes only. And I have to remember, I'll put that disclaimer in there, and just always remember this information is for educational purposes only. And I advise you to speak with any type of medical professional to get specific information for yourself and in your circumstance. I'm just sharing with you the information that I have gathered and from my perspective. So I was talking to a nurse one day. A friend of mine had been hospitalized and had to go on prednisone, and it was a high dose of prednisone. And the nurse was just kind of giving us some side effects to look out for so that we could better care for my friend. And this happened probably about, I say about about 6 or 7 years ago. This took place. So when the nurse was telling us the side effects of prednisone, I was listening, and at this time, my mother and I were really starting to heal and really work at doing hard work in our own individual relationship. And so we were in the thick of it, right? We weren't besties like how we were when she passed away, but we were definitely not frenemies or enemies like how we had been for a while. We definitely were in a better space. So the nurse was like, one time they had a patient take prednisone, and the person was trying to jump out the hospital window because of the impacts, the side effects that prednisone, which is a steroid that is commonly used to treat patients with lupus and other autoimmune diseases, but especially lupus, um, it just caused them to lose it. And so when he said that, I was like, oh my God, that's why my mom was so crazy when I was growing up. She was on prednisone the whole time. So I called her. Well, one morning, that was a Sunday. So the next morning, she came by my house to pick up something on the way to work. And I came to the car and I was like, Mommy, I was so excited. I was like, Mommy, I know why you were so crazy when I was growing up. It was the prednisone. I just thought you was crazy. And she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, oh, really?" And then and I mean, as I talk more and as guests come on and as you see some clips of mommy, you better understand why this is so funny to me. But when I told her about that, she just like she took in what I was saying, but she was like, I don't know if this is a compliment or this. I don't know what you're trying to tell me right now. And my mother was one of those people who we would say wore her feelings on her sleeve. So if you said something that rubbed her the wrong way, you did not have to guess about it. You could see the look on her face, and I get that from her a lot too. You could see by the look on her face, her body language, how she felt about what you had to say. So when I said that to her, she just looked at me like, whatever, girl. And I laughed because I realized that I got a revelation as an adult that set me free as a little girl. The little girl, Adelai, thought something was wrong with her because of how my mother acted or behaved when I was little, and I couldn't quite understand why. But as I got older, I no longer just saw her as a mother and she was supposed to get it right. I could see the humanity in her. I could see that my mother was dealing with extreme mental and emotional pressure. She was dealing with side effects from medicine. She did not know how to deal with that and tried to anesthetize and deal with her pain through drugs and alcohol, and that was a toxic cycle that we went through for a very long time. And as a result of that, I did have to grow up fast. I was that child that had to parent the parent. I was overly responsible at a young age, hyper independent and vigilant at a young age, and I did that out of survival. And we live in a society and a culture where many people will celebrate that and cheer you on for being like that. But many times the person that is in that situation is not in there, is not behaving like that because they want to. And it is an extreme mental and emotional burden that we carry as children when we feel responsible for our parents, especially emotionally. And as I started doing the work, I realized that I am not responsible for my mother's happiness. I am not responsible for my mother's peace. I am not responsible for my mother being um disappointed or not. I have to take ownership for my own emotions and the thoughts that come about as a result of those emotions and the behaviors that come about as a result of those thoughts. And I can do that while also acknowledging that I love my mother and I understand that my mother went through a lot, and I won't allow my mother to manipulate me or control me by making me feel sorry for her or feel obligated to her, because once we become adults, we are not responsible for our parents. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. You don't like to hear this. This is very triggering for you. My mother and I existed in a very codependent, toxic cycle for years. And I know my children, my family members, my friends can tell you, being in an environment with us for longer than 5 minutes, if it was that long, it was a good chance it was going to be an argument. It was going to be tension. Both of us always wanted to be right. Both of us felt very justified in the behavior that we were in. But I can speak for me. When I started healing and doing hard work and becoming mindful and really focusing on emotional wellness, I no longer wanted to be in that cycle. I wanted a relationship with my mother. I wanted to be close to her, but I was not going to do it at the expense of my mental and emotional health. And some of you need to hear this. When we like to throw those scriptures around, honor your mother and your father, that your days may be longer upon the land that the Lord your God has given thee. Yes, that is true. But honoring your mother and father does not mean that you allow them to manipulate you. It does not mean that you allow them to control you. Honoring your mother and father means that you're willing to stand in those difficult places, have those tough conversations, acknowledge or address the things that have been elusive but causing problems. But what you're not willing to do is compromise your integrity, your authenticity to make somebody else feel good. We're not doing that anymore. And I have found, even when we did, even doing mentoring, when we've mentored the youth in the community, I think a lot of mentors get into mentoring because there's a little child in them that never got nurtured or cared for. And so you want to do this for other children because deep down inside, you want somebody to do this for you. And I remember doing mentoring and looking at those children, and I remember it was very we did a program called Shine Time, and we still have Shine Time, but we just don't do it as frequently as we used to do it. But I remember going through that and just being really triggered by the conversations we were having because I could just remember being their age. I could remember being 13, 14, 15, 16, and just being challenged in my relationship with my mother, not feeling connected to her, and carrying that into adulthood. See, some of you might be listening to me and you're an adult and you're like, yeah, I went through that as a child, but I'm over it. But are you really? What are your relationships like? Have you been able to connect with the people you love? Or are you guarded? Are you able to be vulnerable? Are you able to express how you feel without getting angry or argumentative or shutting down or tensing up? Because mental wellness is very important for your overall health. You can't get your body in shape if you're not going to work on making sure that your mind is intact. But what you got to understand is in order for your mind to be intact, you have to also be willing to say, hey, what's going on with these emotions and feelings that I'm having? When when I started doing hard work with my mother, I realized that my mother was a girl too. My mother was a woman too. And even sometimes we look at our parents like they're supposed to be perfect and they're supposed to be getting it right. But a lot of times our parents were not prepared to be parents. And even if they were, nothing can prepare you for raising another human being that has never been on this earth before, will never be anybody like you again. We all life can be hard. And when you really want to have true, intimate, fulfilling relationships and connections with people, that's going to be difficult. At times. Not all the time, but at times. And a lot of times we try to people please. We try to overcompensate, try to do more because we know, well, I know my mom how she grew up and what they went through, so, I kind of give her a pass and I know she don't really mean what she said. No. Set those boundaries. Don't let your mother be mentally, emotionally, verbally abusive to you. Don't allow that to happen because she went through a lot as a child. Yes, and so did you as a result of her not dealing with her mental and emotional issues. And now we both have to heal. And how we break the cycle, we communicate, we get in community with others who are living a similar type of life so that we can be supported and uplifted as we grow in this journey. You inherited the pain, but you don't have to pass it on. You inherited the pain, but you don't have to keep it going. And if you're a mother and you know that you've done these things to your children, you've passed on trauma, you've been mentally and verbally and emotionally abusive and didn't even realize it because you were doing the best you could with what you had. I salute you, I honor you, and I welcome you into this journey of healing with us because it's time to make a change. It is very complex to love someone that couldn't love you the way you needed. It can be very complex to love that person well. And the only way you're going to do that is by doing your own work, by working on yourself, by healing. I just recorded a amazing, powerful session that'll be out next week on our next episode with our resident mental health professional here in the Heart Tribe. And that conversation was so good. If you're wanting to learn how can I start to address this inherited pain with my mother, check us out next week because she's dropping gems that you can use in a tangible way. But what I'm gonna tell you is one, you got to start telling the truth. You got to be honest. You got to be honest about what you're going through and what you're experiencing. You may love your mother. Your mother may be going through some things right now in life where she really needs you, but that still does not mean that you allow your mother to be mentally, emotionally, or verbally abusive towards you. Boundaries need to be put in place. It is very complex to love people who hurt us, There are different ways that you can love them. There was a season, there were seasons in the relationship with my mother and I where we vacillated between being very close and communicating a lot to where I had to cut back on the amount of communication just simply because I needed to make sure I was okay and I was well. And my mother didn't always like that, but I couldn't worry about that because I had to focus on my own mental health. So these are some things I want you to think about as you go throughout this week and as you think about the inherited pain that you may have gotten from your mom, your grandma. Like look at your family. What are the patterns that you notice? What is a common theme in people's attitudes? What is a common theme in how they handle various challenges in the family, in their personal lives? Like start to be more aware of your surroundings. A lot of people just go through life just aimlessly, just not paying attention. The Bible tells us the road to hell and destruction is wide. The gate to life is very narrow. I'm talking about this because there's a lot of men and women out here that you have issues with your mother and it is causing serious problems in your health. It is causing problems in your finances. It is causing problems in your relationships. And you can't get better because you're so busy worrying about, I don't want to put my mom out there. And I know my mama did the best she could. Both things could be true. She did the best she could and it hurt you. Her best was not enough for you. And you had to come up with coping mechanisms to deal with that. And you're realizing those coping mechanisms are no longer working. So now what do we do? So let's look at some emotional behaviors that you're calling normal that are really inherited survival tactics. You know, like being dismissive, saying you don't care when you really care, trying to um just suck it up, don't want to let the tears flow. You feel things in your body when certain situations happen and you just stuff it down and act like it's not there. What emotional behaviors are you calling normal that were really inherited survival tactics, right? Are you another thing I want you to think about, are you the version of you your younger self needed and your mother didn't have? So in this season, you're no longer that child, or maybe you're a young adult. So you can't go back. The Bible tells us to be born again, and Jesus tells us to be like little children. And I was thinking about that. When you're born again, he's telling us to be like little children because I feel that Jesus was also acknowledging that maybe when you were born the first time, you didn't get what you needed. You weren't loved and you weren't cared for and you weren't nurtured the way you needed to. And it wasn't that they didn't love you. Maybe they just didn't know how. They didn't have the capacity to do it. But I'm telling you, when you're born again, I will parent you. I will love you. I will care for you. Isn't that powerful? So, right now in this season, are you the version of yourself that the younger you needed? Because remember, there's still a little girl and a little boy inside of you that you have to nurture and take care of. That's nobody else's responsibility but yours. That's that inner voice. That's that inner you. So think about that. And if you're not that version of yourself that you needed, what needs to happen for you to become that version of yourself? Right? What would happen if you stopped managing everyone else's emotions and started managing your own? Mm. Are you that child, that son or daughter that feels like you got to always make sure your mom is okay? You got to always make sure that she's not upset, that she doesn't feel offended, that she doesn't feel abandoned or neglected. Have you taken on that parenting role for your parents, for your spouse or significant other? Maybe you have children, but you're being a helicopter parent. You're doing too much. You're managing emotions that they need to be processing themselves. So, what would happen if you stopped managing everyone else's emotions and started managing your own? Think about these things. And I have a journal prompt that I want you to journal for this week. And that question is, in what ways do I love my mother while also feeling hurt by her? And for those of you who mommies may have transitioned like me, in what ways did I love my mother or show love to my mother while also feeling hurt by her? Now, I know that's a heavy question. I know that's deep for a lot of people. I know that that might cause some serious cognitive dissonance. That might make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe just hearing me read that question triggered something someplace in your body. I encourage you to explore that. Maybe your chest tightened, your back got tense. Maybe you got a headache. Maybe you felt sick to your stomach when I talked about in what ways do or did I love my mother while also feeling hurt by her. I want you to journal about that this week because we need to process the complexity of loving someone who couldn't always love us the way we needed, and we needed that from them. You good. And I'm sharing this with you, and I'm recording right now, and I have a child that's walking through, and I encourage you. I'm a mother. I know I have not always gotten it right with my children. I still don't always get it right. But and in that same token, I am willing and available to process with them however they need, because what I know is it doesn't matter how much I apologize for where I hurt them, where I dropped the ball, where I didn't show up. Guess what? It's their responsibility to heal that little person that wasn't taken care of at this point in life. My mother apologized. Me and my mother started doing work together, but there were still times that I cried and emotions came up from things that happened in the past, that it was not her responsibility to get me through that. It is now my responsibility. And that's why we have the Heartline, because I am here with you to share with you, to encourage you to get through this. Yes, you inherited things from your mother, but you don't have to pass it on. Now remember, these prompts, this journal prompt, and anytime you see how we'll have weekly journal prompts coming out, and these are not to hurt anyone or to shame anyone. These prompts are designed to bring about truth, healing, and personal clarity. This is not about you bashing your mother or your father. We are humanizing our mothers beyond the role of mother, because your mother was a girl, was a baby girl, was a little girl, then became a teenager, then was a young adult at some point in her life. So this space is a space to create compassion. This is a space for grief and a deeper understanding of who we are, and more so why God put us here. We were put here to bring honor and glory to God, but he put us here to do that. All of us do that in a unique way, and not dealing with this unresolved pain and trauma really weighs us down from being the best version of ourselves and being able to live the life of purpose and prosperity and profit that God has called us to live. So you don't have to post or share your journal prompts with others. I just want you to honor it. And if you want to share this with us, remember, you can email us at info@addiebb.com. You can go to our link tree and connect with us there. But I just want you to know that you are loved, you are cared for, and you are supported. Remember, you can follow me on social media at Heart Coach Talk. You can also visit the link tree / the Heart Connections for tools and strategies and tips for you to begin and further your healing and growth journey. And if you're ready to go deeper, If you want to talk to me about growing heart equity in your personal spaces, with your groups, or with your organizations, please reach out. info@addiebb.com. Remember, you're not crazy. You're just carrying things that were never yours to carry, and it is time for you to lay these burdens down. Matthew 11:28-30. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly at heart. For my burden is easy. My yoke is light, my burden is easy." Let's take this burden off, children. You don't have to care for your mothers, and you can love her and care for her, but you're not responsible for her the way you thought. And let's do this hard work together so we can support one another and live and be the most whole and complete version of ourselves. Okay? So remember, when you grow heart equity, you heal your heart and you transform the world, right? Let's continue to do that together. I'll see y'all next week. This is Adelai Brown, your heart coach, signing out.